Not all monsters lurk in the dark. Some tuck you in at night, bring you a warm cup of tea, whisper, "I'm doing this for your own good." And slowly, without you even realizing it, they consume you completely. Carl Jung uncovered a chilling truth. The most dangerous prison isn't made of iron bars or chains. It's built from love, affection, guilt and care. It comes wrapped in dependence, emotional debts, and worst of all, it wears a smile. You didn't grow up, you learned to obey. You didn't learn how to stand on your own. You learned how to please, because someone needed you to need them. This isn't about abuse in the usual sense. It's about devotion turned toxic, care turned suffocating. Jung called this figure the devouring mother, not because she's cruel, but because her love is so overwhelming that it devours every part of who you could become. You didn't even see it. You thought it was normal. You believed that staying small was what made you good. And now, years later, you're stuck in your 20s, 30s, emotionally frozen, spiritually stunted, still waiting for someone to tell you what to do, still haunted by the echo of her voice. Whenever you try to take a risk, you hear it whisper, "Are you sure that's safe? Don't leave me." This isn't just your story, it's a silent epidemic. Until you name it, until you recognize it, you'll never break free. This video will expose the psychology behind the devouring mother, why so many men stay emotionally paralyzed, and how Jung's darkest insight might hold the key to your freedom, because the hardest enemy to face is often the one who made you feel safest. What if the person who loved you most was also the one who unknowingly held you captive? That's the horror Jung dared to face, a horror wrapped in hugs, kisses, and warm meals. Not neglect, not abuse, but too much love, too much protection. Too much of her. He called her the devouring mother, a woman who loves so deeply that she never truly lets go. Not physically, but psychologically. It starts with kindness. She ties your shoes, packs your lunch, holds your hand tightly, and you feel safe. But as you grow, her grip doesn't loosen. It tightens. She picks your clothes, decides what's best for you, tells you how to feel, who to trust, what's dangerous. She never says aloud, "I don't want you to grow up." But her actions scream it. Jung saw this as a powerful archetype. The shadow side of the nurturing mother. When care becomes control, love becomes manipulation, warmth becomes a cage. Because here's the bitter truth. Love can be a weapon, not just hatred, not just violence, but love when used to keep someone weak. She doesn't want to hurt you. She isn't evil. She's scared. Terrified of being alone, terrified of losing her child to the world. So she clings, protects, controls, but in doing so, she suffocates. She steals your freedom under the guise of affection, and the consequences are profound. Emotional paralysis, fear of independence, a constant feeling that something's missing, even when you have everything. You replay the same patterns, waiting for permission to move forward, needing approval before you act, always looking back at the voice that never lets you fully go. Jung's insight isn't a judgment, it's a call to awareness, to recognize the shadow love that traps you, to see it clearly and say, "This is not my truth. This is not my prison." Because only by naming it can you begin to reclaim your power. The devouring mother is a warning and a challenge. She teaches us how love, even at its most sincere, can become destructive if it denies growth and freedom. And she reminds us that healing starts by facing the most painful parts of our past with courage and compassion. So if you feel stuck, frozen by invisible chains made of care, remember this: breaking free doesn't mean rejecting love, it means redefining it. It means setting boundaries, finding your voice, and stepping into the person you were always meant to be. Carl Jung showed us the path, not easy, but necessary. The path out of the cage built from love, and into a life truly lived on your own terms, because sometimes, the most terrifying monsters are the ones who once promised to protect us. And sometimes, the bravest act is to walk away from that protection and finally stand alone. Not all chains are forged from iron. Some are woven from words, soft, subtle, and suffocating. She wraps him tightly in guilt, whispering, "You're my whole world, no one will ever love you like I do. I sacrificed everything for you. And the cruelest of all, you wouldn't hurt your mother, would you?" Each phrase sounds like love, but in truth they're invisible shackles disguised as devotion. She's not raising a son. She's raising a servant, an emotional caretaker trapped in a prison built from obligation and fear. A man too afraid to stand for himself, because her voice still echoes in his mind every time he tries to break free. Jung didn't create this idea out of thin air. He saw it everywhere in myths, legends, dreams. The boy locked in the forest by the witch, the hero's path blocked by a fierce dragon, the siren's song pulling him back to shore whenever he dares to leave. This is the devouring mother archetype, an ancient universal pattern deep in the human psyche. And she's not just a mother, she's a force found in governments, institutions, even relationships. Anytime something whispers, "We'll keep you safe, just give up your freedom," that's her voice speaking. But it all begins with the mother, because she doesn't raise a man, she raises a boy who never grows up. Someone who doubts himself, dodges responsibility, and unconsciously chases women who remind him of her, and then resents those women for the hold she has over him. He becomes a prisoner of comfort, a hostage bound by dependency, with walls built from affection, safety, and love. It's not pain that traps him, it's pleasure. The softness, the sweetness, the slow poison disguised as care, and the cruelest twist. He doesn't even realize it's happening. Because who questions mother's love? It's sacred, holy, pure. But purity isn't always good, and care isn't always healing. Sometimes, it's control. Sometimes, it's fear. Sometimes, it's the invisible force that keeps you from ever becoming your true self. Childhood is meant to be a time of discovery, a space where you learn who you are. But if you grew up in the shadow of the devouring mother, you never learned that. You only learned who she needed you to be. The child becomes her mirror, her emotional sponge, her unpaid therapist, her stand-in husband. Anger isn't allowed, because it hurts her. Dreams are forbidden, because what if you fail and disappoint her? You learn to shrink, to silence yourself, to submit, and at first glance, it looks innocent. A nice boy, polite, sensitive, always putting others first. But behind that smile hides a child who was never really a child. He was never allowed to say, "No, I don't want that." He couldn't say, "I'm angry," or "I disagree." Every time he tried, he saw her cry, or freeze, or hear her say, "After everything I've done for you." That sentence, soft as it sounds, is a dagger, a weaponized guilt trip, designed to break him down. This is the invisible prison that keeps so many men locked in boyhood, trapped by love that's too heavy to carry. It's a cage built not from cruelty, but from overprotection, not from hatred, but from fear. And until you name it, until you see it clearly, it's impossible to escape. But here's the thing. Once you recognize the devouring mother's grip, once you hear the silent commands for what they really are, you can begin to reclaim your freedom. It's a painful process, but also a powerful one. To walk away from the safety that's actually a cage, to grow wings when you were told to stay grounded. Jung showed us that the road to individuation, the process of becoming your true self, is about breaking free from these invisible chains. It means learning to say no without guilt, to express anger without fear, to dream without permission. You don't have to be trapped forever. The voice that held you back is just a shadow now, and shadows disappear in the light of awareness. When you step into that light, you take the first step toward the freedom you were always meant to have. It's wrapped in love so tightly it feels unbreakable. And he gives in again and again until one day, he wakes up and realizes he no longer knows who he really is. He only knows who he's supposed to be. This is the wound Carl Jung warned us about: a fractured identity. A man who's grown physically but remains emotionally shackled to his mother's expectations. He fears failure not because he can't handle it, but because he can't bear the thought of letting her down. He fears success because it might pull him too far away from her. Independence terrifies him because he's never practiced it. So instead, he hides in routine, in comfort, in addiction, in quiet desperation. Signs of this wound show everywhere in the real world. Chronic indecisiveness, because making his own choices was never allowed. People-pleasing, since love always came with the condition of obedience. Fear of confrontation, because disagreement meant punishment, not physical but emotional. An attraction to controlling partners, because he's used to love feeling like constant surveillance. Guilt when he enjoys freedom, because autonomy was taught to him as betrayal. These men grow up walking on emotional eggshells, not just around their mothers, but around everyone. They've internalized the belief that their needs are dangerous, their desires selfish, their voice a threat. They don't lead, they follow. They don't express, they suppress. And eventually the pressure builds until they explode, sometimes in anger, sometimes in breakdown, sometimes by shutting down completely. Looking back, they're often confused. But my mother was so loving, she gave me everything. She just cared too much. They don't realize that love can wound when it's wielded as control, that guilt becomes the weapon, stopping them from healing. Jung saw this pattern repeated in men who couldn't commit, who battled addiction, anxiety or depression, men who resented women but didn't understand why. The truth, they weren't angry at women, they were angry at her, but that anger stayed buried, because society tells us you can't be angry at your mother, you're supposed to be grateful, you're supposed to honor her, you're supposed to be a good son. But what if being a good son means dying inside? What if it means never truly becoming a man? Jung believed this to be the harshest shadow of all. Until you face it, you remain emotionally frozen, stunted, performing life rather than living it. These wounds don't bleed, they don't leave visible scars, but they echo relentlessly in every job you quit, in every woman you chase who doesn't love you back, in every dream you bury because you should be more realistic. They echo in the way you speak quietly when you should be roaring. They echo in every apology you make just for existing. Every time you hesitate to speak your truth. This is the silent trauma no one talks about. It doesn't look like trauma, it feels like love. But it's not love, it's emotional ownership. Dependency dressed up as devotion. It's a boy robbed of his own becoming. This is the invisible chain. And unless you see it, unless you name it, it will keep you bound, tied to a past that was never meant to set you free. But here's the secret. Awareness is the key. Once you recognize the patterns, the guilt, the fear, the longing to please, you begin to reclaim yourself. You learn that love isn't supposed to feel like a cage, that freedom isn't betrayal. It takes courage to face the shadow. It takes strength to say no to the invisible chains wrapped in love. But when you do, you take the first real step toward healing. You begin to rebuild who you are, not the man she needed you to be, but the man you were always meant to become. Because true love frees you. It doesn't bind you, it doesn't silence you. It lets you fly. Some prisons don't need walls. They don't need locks or chains. All they require is one thing, your belief that you can't walk away. That's why so many people stay trapped in the grip of the devouring mother. Not because they can't leave, but because they don't even realize they're prisoners. This is a hidden cage built from warmth, decorated with affection, but strengthened by guilt. From the outside it looks perfect, a mother who loves her son beyond measure. A bond so close that everyone admires it. They say things like, "You're lucky, be grateful she sacrificed everything for you." But they don't see the truth beneath the surface. She didn't raise a man, she raised a dependent. Carl Jung saw this clearly. He observed how men were emotionally castrated, not through cruelty or hatred, but through love without limits. The scariest part, society glorifies this. We worship motherhood, and rightfully so. But when that worship becomes blind, we stop asking the hard questions. What if a mother's love smothers instead of nurtures? What if her kindness becomes a cage of control? What if she stunts her child by protecting him too fiercely? The devouring mother doesn't shout. She doesn't punish with harsh words or actions. Instead, she guilt trips. She says things like, "I worry because I love you. After all I gave up for you. This is how you treat me. You're breaking my heart." And just like that, you shrink. You hold back because you don't want to hurt her. Because she meant well. Because love feels like a debt you can never repay. That's the trap. You start to believe that growing up, setting boundaries, living your own life, that all feels like betrayal. So, even if you move out physically, psychologically you never leave. You still hear her voice in your head when making choices. You still feel her disappointment when you pick something she wouldn't approve. You measure your worth by how much you please her. This isn't love. It's emotional colonization. Most men don't even recognize it. They think it's just normal. They say, my mom's just really involved. She means well. I don't want to upset her. But behind all that politeness is a man who's never been allowed to be angry, to rebel, to say no, because every no felt like a crime. He learned early on that his freedom meant her suffering. So, he traded his own voice for her peace of mind over and over until it became automatic. That's why most never break free. Because the prison is wrapped in praise, and the key is buried deep beneath layers of shame. Jung believed this dynamic is one of the most dangerous in human psychology. It masks weakness as virtue. The obedient son, the nice guy, the helpful boy who never voices his true thoughts. He's rewarded for compliance, until one day he breaks. Maybe it's depression. Maybe addiction. Maybe a cycle of relationships where the same pattern repeats. He chases love but never finds it, because the love he knows is tied to control. He fears rejection, but can't explain why. And the cycle continues, until he sees it, until he understands that the voice in his head, the one that says you can't do this, you're not good enough, you owe her, isn't his own. It's a ghost of a love that trapped him, disguised as care but rooted in fear. Freedom starts with awareness, recognizing that love should lift you up, not hold you down. That setting boundaries is not betrayal. That becoming yourself is not selfish. Breaking free means reclaiming your story, your voice, your life. Because the hardest prison to escape is the one built with love, and the only way out is to stop believing you're meant to stay. He looks for women who take charge for him, who make choices in his place, who wrap him up tight just like she did. Because deep down, he's still trying to finish a story that was never his to write. And what about society? It keeps feeding this lie. We hear jokes like mama's boy, or advice like a man who respects his mother will respect his wife. We say behind every successful man is a strong mother. These aren't always wrong, but they become dangerous when they blind us to the emotional chains that bind so many men. Here's the truth. Not every man who loves his mother is truly free. Some are trapped, buried beneath the weight of expectations they never agreed to carry. And they don't talk about it, because who wants to admit the woman who loved you most might also be the one who hurt you most? It feels ungrateful. It feels cruel. So they stay silent, but silence is not healing. It's surrender. Jung didn't preach hate or blame. He said something much harder. See clearly, separate, become whole. You can't become whole if half of you still belongs to her. That's why so many never break free, because freedom feels like betrayal. But it's not betrayal. It's the start of becoming. You grow older. You learn how to handle life. You pay your bills, get a job, maybe a partner. But inside, you're still that boy in the bedroom. Still seeking approval. Still afraid to speak your truth. Still measuring your worth by how much she smiles. This is the price of blindness. You can have everything on paper, a house, a career, a family, and still be emotionally frozen. Because your mind is wired for obedience, not autonomy. You second-guess yourself. You fear conflict. You avoid risks. Because somewhere inside, you learned that stepping out of line breaks the heart of the person you love. So you became the nice guy. The harmless one. The accommodating one. But behind that smile is a quiet rage. Carl Jung called this the failure to individuate, the inability to separate psychologically from your parents, especially your mother. And this failure leaks into every corner of your adult life. You don't fall in love. You fall into familiarity. You're drawn to women who remind you of your mother, not because they're kind, but because they're controlling. You confuse care with control. You mistake anxiety for love. You let your boundaries disappear, because you were never allowed to have them in the first place. At first, it feels safe. She gets you. She wants the best for you. But soon, you're drowning. You realize, you're not a man in a relationship, you're a boy still trying to please mom. And every time you assert yourself, guilt follows. You apologize for needing space. You shrink yourself to keep the peace. And the cycle repeats. Men trapped by the devouring mother often carry a deep buried rage, but they don't express it outwardly. They implode. They self-sabotage. They push away the very love they crave, afraid it will trap them like before. They live in a constant battle between wanting freedom and fearing the loss of safety. This is the hidden wound no one talks about. Because it's wrapped in love, it's disguised as care. But it's a prison nonetheless. A psychological cage with invisible bars made of guilt and obligation. And the only way out is to recognize it. To see that love doesn't have to control. To understand that growing up means saying no, even if it breaks her heart. To reclaim your voice, your desires, your life. Because breaking free isn't betrayal. It's becoming who you were always meant to be. Many men caught in this cycle fall into addiction. They stay stuck in dead-end jobs. They avoid responsibility, not because they're lazy, but because real success demands defining yourself. And you can't define yourself if someone else already decided who you should be. You were told what to fear, what to feel, what to value. Now when it's time to write your own story, you don't even know where to start, so you play small. You hide, and then you hate yourself for it. Jung called this the shadow, the part of you. You push down, deny, repress. You stuff away your anger, your desires, your wildness, because she taught you those things are dangerous, disrespectful, or shameful. But what you suppress doesn't vanish. It waits. It festers. One day it explodes. Maybe you snap at a stranger on the street. Maybe you cheat on someone you love. Maybe you vanish without a word, leaving everyone wondering what happened. And you're left confused, because you don't understand the storm inside you. The truth is, you were never taught how to be whole, only how to be good. But good is not the same as real. The longer you live blind to this, the more invisible you become to others and even to yourself. People can't sense your presence. You don't have strong opinions or passions. You're agreeable but forgettable. Women might like you, but they don't desire you. Bosses might hire you, but they don't promote you. Friends might call you loyal, but they don't turn to you for guidance or vision. Why? Because you don't stand anywhere. You were never allowed to stand. This is the most tragic price of all. You can have everything that looks like success, a career, a relationship, a reputation, and still feel empty. Because it wasn't really you who built that life. It was the version of you who wouldn't make her cry. So you go through the motions. You please everyone. You smile at family dinners, and quietly wonder, is this all there is? Carl Jung once said, nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their children than the unlived life of the parent. The devouring mother projects her own dreams, she never fulfilled, her fears left unresolved, her endless hunger for emotional validation onto her child. And the child, he sacrifices himself for her peace, but peace built on self-abandonment is not peace at all. It's slow suicide. You lose your fire, your depth, your masculinity, your soul, all for the sake of being good. But here's the light in the darkness. Even if the trap was set in childhood, the door has always been open. You've been told to be good, to obey, to keep the peace, to never make her cry. But Jung offers something different, something dangerous and sacred. He calls it individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming your true self. Not the version shaped by family, not the one carved from guilt and duty, but the real you, buried deep underneath all that, waiting to be born. Because if the devouring mother is a prison built on affection, individuation is the jailbreak. Individuation isn't self-improvement, it's self-discovery. It's not about becoming better, it's about becoming real. In Jung's words, it's the process by which a person becomes an individual. Individuation is about becoming a complete, indivisible whole, a self that stands apart from the unconscious influences that shaped you, especially those from your parents. Before you can truly lead, love, or create, you have to exist as your own person. That means facing the parts of yourself that were buried long ago, those parts your mother's love wouldn't allow to survive. To break free, the first step is recognizing the trap. This is what Jung called the mother complex. A deep psychological pattern, where the mother symbolizes emotional control, authority, and identity. For many men, this complex shows up as guilt when trying to assert independence, a constant fear of disappointing women, choosing partners who mother rather than challenge them, emotional passivity disguised as kindness, or a hidden rage toward women that feels too shameful to express. But breaking this complex isn't about attacking your mother. It's about reclaiming what you gave up for her. Love your anger, your confidence, your voice, your freedom. The first step in individuation is facing your shadow, the part of you that you were taught to hide. This shadow contains all the qualities your mother or society deemed too much: anger, sexuality, assertiveness, independence, rebellion. The devouring mother fears these traits because they threaten her control, so she smothers them, and you internalize that smothering. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. If you don't face your shadow, you live in quiet torment, trapped by fears that were never yours to carry. Shadow work isn't about becoming dark, it's about becoming whole. You don't have to act on every dark impulse, but you must admit it exists. Only then can you choose your response, instead of simply reacting. Here's the hardest part. You don't need to hate your mother to be free of her. This isn't about blame, it's about boundaries. Many devouring mothers aren't evil. They're emotionally wounded women, who often without realizing it, make their children the center of their universe. They say things like, "I only want what's best for you. No one will ever love you like I do. I sacrificed everything for you." And they truly mean it. But love without respect isn't love. It's imprisonment. You can forgive her pain while still refusing to live inside it. You can be grateful for what she gave you while rejecting what she took. Emotional separation means you no longer need her approval to feel valid. You no longer fear her disappointment like it's death itself. You stop living her unlived life and start living your own. The greatest casualty of the devouring mother is the good boy. He's polite, pleasing, obedient. He does what's expected. He makes everyone comfortable, but he doesn't exist. He's a mask, a survival strategy, a soul on pause. Jung's process of individuation demands the death of this false self, and that feels like betrayal. You will feel guilt. You will feel grief. You will feel like a bad son. But you're not. You're simply choosing truth over comfort, authenticity over obedience. You're finally becoming who you were always meant to be. The good boy dies so the man can finally live. When you break away from the devouring mother, you begin to reclaim your masculine energy, not the toxic kind, fueled by anger, but a sacred force rooted in purpose and direction. You stop living to be chosen, and start choosing. You no longer crave understanding. Instead, you stand firm in what you know. Conflict doesn't scare you anymore. You embrace truth even when it cuts deep. You become dangerous not to others, but to lies, weakness, and manipulation. A man anchored in his own soul can't be controlled. He loves fiercely without losing himself. He walks away when necessary. He serves without becoming a slave. Carl Jung believed every human has a call toward wholeness, not perfection, but the fullness of self. Wholeness means accepting all parts of you, your light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, logic and intuition. Individuation isn't about becoming someone new, it's about rediscovering the person you were before the world told you who to be. This is no quick fix. It's a lifelong journey, but every step you take away from the mother complex is a step closer to yourself. Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." But what if you stopped carrying that burden? What if you became the father you never had? What if you gave yourself permission to be bold, assertive, honest, and real? That is the final step of individuation, fathering yourself. Guiding your inner child out of the fog of emotional dependence and into the fire of personal destiny. You stop being a child of someone else's dreams and become the author of your own story. This is the true initiation into manhood, not a title handed down by society or marked by birthdays, but earned quietly through pain, truth, and the courage to lose everything false. This is individuation, the path away from comfort toward character, from needing to be loved toward becoming whole. There comes a moment, quiet, cold, and unexpected, when you realize you were never truly living. You were performing, pleasing, shrinking, not because you lacked strength, but because the person you feared disappointing was the very one who first taught you what love means. This is the ultimate test. Not everyone faces it. Most stay locked in a cage adorned with memories, guarded by guilt, and justified by tradition. But a few choose to leave, and they never return the same.
This is your moment. You're no longer a boy. You don't need permission to grow, to speak, or to walk away. You don't have to keep sacrificing yourself on the altar of her comfort. Because love that demands your silence isn't love, it's control. Jung said, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." The devouring mother lives in your mind, but her reign ends the moment you walk through that inferno and come out the other side. Scarred, yes, but yours. Let go of the guilt. She'll say you've changed. She'll say you're cold. She'll remind you of everything she's done for you, as if forgetting her sacrifices is betrayal.
But that's not guilt speaking. That's growth being mistaken for disloyalty. You didn't come this far to become what she wanted. You came this far to become who you truly are. And if love was real, it will survive your truth. The moment you break away, silence follows a psychological orphaning, an emotional death. It's the tearing away of the only identity you ever knew. But if you linger in that silence, if you endure it, something new begins to emerge. A voice that's been buried beneath her expectations, beneath society's lies, beneath your own fear of being fully alive. That voice won't scream, it won't plead, it won't apologize. It will simply say, "I am." And for the first time you'll believe it. You stand at a crossroads, with two choices. 1. Stay where it's safe. Let guilt be your compass. Let comfort dull your hunger. Let love keep you small. Or 2. Walk into the unknown. Feel the pain. Face the rage. Reclaim yourself. But know this: on the other side of breaking away is a man no one can manipulate, a soul no mother can consume, a life no longer lived in the shadows. Not all sons are born. Some must break away to become men. You were never truly free. You just didn't question the walls around you because they were painted with love and care. But now, you see them clearly.
And now, you decide. Because the scariest monsters don't chase you, they raise you.